They laughed when he showed up. Just a tired black Marine in an old dress uniform, alone in the crowd. The guards said he looked out of place. But when his son finally took the stage, he said one sentence, just 12 words, that stopped the entire gym cold. And no one ever looked at that family the same way again. The sun pressed down like a slow hand on the back of his neck. Heat shimmered off the pavement, making everything look like it was just about to disappear. Solomon Kane stepped out of his truck, old, dust-colored, loud on the turn, but loyal like few things left in the world. He paused for a second, hands still on the door, eyes scanning the crowd already spilling toward the gym entrance. Families clutched gift bags, kids carried rolled posters, balloons bounced against car hoods, laughter danced through the air like it had nowhere else to be. Solomon adjusted his jacket, dark blue, high-collared, ribboned with things most people never asked about. His boots, polished just right, clicked against the asphalt as he walked. Not fast, not slow, just steady. There was no one beside him, no one waiting to guide him in. But his steps didn't falter. He'd learned long ago how to move like he belonged in every room, even when the room tried to forget him. Halfway to the doors, a little boy tugged on his mother's sleeve and pointed. "Is he a soldier?" he asked. The mother looked up, caught Solomon's presence, and gave a quick smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She pulled her son away gently, like his curiosity might have cost something. Solomon kept walking. The gym loomed ahead, Elmridge High, block lettering peeling slightly from the brick. A banner read "Congratulations, Class of 2024, in glittering silver. The building was wrapped in noise and pride, and last-minute adjustments. But Solomon moved through it like a whisper, a calm one, the kind people heard long after it passed. He stepped into the shade of the overhang, and waited in line behind a couple, holding a bouquet that drooped in the heat. The woman in front turned, saw him, blinked, then turned back. No words, just the kind of pause that let you know someone saw you but didn't know what to do with you. When it was his turn, Solomon handed over his printed ticket. The volunteer barely looked at it. Young guy, headset crooked, clipboard tight in one hand. "You were the student?" he asked, like it wasn't obvious. Solomon nodded. "My son." The guy scanned the ticket, nodded quickly. "Third row, left side, family section." "Thank you," Solomon said quietly. He stepped inside. The gym was louder than outside, clapping already starting for someone's cousin, name echoing off the rafters. The air smelled of floor wax, popcorn, and nerves. Solomon paused just inside the threshold. He didn't smile, didn't scan for cameras. He just looked at the stage, then at the rows of chairs lined up like memories waiting to be made. He inhaled once, then walked in. Not with noise, but with presence. The gym swallowed him in layers, bleachers packed tight, voices overlapping, the bassy hum of a mic test in the background. Every folding chair seemed to creak with the weight of someone's moment. Solomon moved down the side aisle, his ticket still in hand. His eyes scanned the rows. Third row, left side. That's what the kid at the door had said. But before he could reach it, another volunteer, this one older, wearing a staff polo and a sheen of sweat, stepped in his path. "Sir, I think this section's full," she said, eyes darting past him before they ever met his. "We've got open seats toward the back." Solomon held out the paper. "Ticket says front." She looked at it, blinked, then offered a practiced smile, the kind that wasn't meant to comfort, just to close the conversation.
"Yeah, we've had a lot of mix-ups."
"Happens every year. You'll still get a good view." He could have pressed, could have pointed to the half-empty row a few feet away, but he didn't, not because he agreed, just because some fights weren't about who was right, they were about who got tired first. And Solomon had spent his whole life choosing where not to bleed. So he nodded once, small, controlled. "All right." He turned, walked down the opposite aisle. The back row was near the entrance, wedged between a trash can and the Booster Club table, where leftover t-shirts hung limply from a wire rack. He found a seat and eased down into it, knees tight, back straight. The chair wobbled under him, thin plastic, legs uneven. He adjusted it without complaint. Ahead of him, the crowd pulsed. Camera flashes popped like fireflies. Parents leaned into each other for photos. A woman in the third row, the row that should have been his, waved wildly at a girl in a red gown.
Solomon didn't wave.
Didn't shift. just rested his hands on his thighs, and watched the stage. His ticket, now folded once, sat neatly in his lap. He didn't sigh. He didn't roll his eyes.
He had learned long ago how to hold space in rooms that didn't know how to hold him.
Some people get to show up and be seen. Others learn to show up and wait. And Solomon Kane was good at waiting. The gym had settled into a rhythm. Announcements through crackling speakers. The low murmur of families shifting in folding chairs. The occasional cheer rising up like a balloon that couldn't stay tethered. Solomon sat still in the back row. Spine straight. Hands calm. Eyes forward. He wasn't watching any one thing. He was watching everything. That's when the two guards noticed him. They weren't police, just school security. Black polos, radios on their belts, shiny lanyards swinging when they walked. One had a clipboard tucked under his arm like he was inspecting property. The other had a lazy kind of walk, like his badge had given him permission to stop trying. They stood off to the side at first, whispering, half watching the crowd, half watching Solomon. "You see that guy?" the taller one muttered, nodding toward the back row. "Yeah," the other said, squinting. "Full dress blues? Really?" The taller one smirked. "Looks like somebody missed being saluted." They laughed, not loud, just enough, just for themselves. Solomon didn't move. He'd heard the tone before, different word, same cadence. The kind of mockery that wore manners like cologne, faint, but sour, underneath. The guards finally peeled themselves from the wall and started toward him. Not quickly. The kind of approach meant to be noticed before it arrived. The taller one stopped a few feet away, bent down slightly, resting his hands on his knees, like he was addressing someone who'd gotten confused. "Hey there, sir. You need help finding your seat." Solomon turned his head slightly. "I'm seated." The guard gestured toward the front. "This is overflow. You're not really supposed to be back here, unless you're late or don't have tickets." Solomon pulled the folded paper from his lap, handed it over without a word. The guard took it, glanced, blinked. "Third row left." He looked back toward the crowd, then shrugged. "Guess they moved you, huh?" The other one chimed in, louder than necessary. "Yeah, probably a mix-up. Happens." Then under his breath, with a grin, "Or maybe someone just liked the view back here." They both chuckled. Solomon didn't. He didn't frown, didn't glare, just looked forward again, like the conversation was done, like their voices had floated past him, unworthy of catching. His stillness made them itch. It always did. Some men speak with volume. Others speak by not rising when expected. The guards lingered a beat longer than they should have, then backed off, muttering something into their radios that didn't matter. Solomon sat, not because he was told to, because he chose to. And sometimes that's the loudest sound in the room. The line of graduates curved along the side wall like a slow river, robes swaying, tassels flipping with every nervous shift of weight. Some kids laughed too loud. Others bounced on their heels trying to hide the shake in their hands. Malik Kane stood near the middle, shoulders square, eyes locked on the gym floor ahead. He should have been thinking about his cue, the handshake, the exact spot to pause for the photo. But he wasn't. He was watching the back row. He'd spotted his father the second he walked in. Even from that distance, even in a sea of heads, Malik could always find him. There was something about the way Solomon sat, anchored, quiet, unmoved by the swirl of everything around him, like he was the one thing in the room that didn't need adjusting. But now, Malik saw two figures drifting toward him. Security, the ones with the stiff shirts and crooked grins. He couldn't hear what they said, but he didn't need to. He saw the way they leaned in too close, the way one of them smirked and gestured, like his father's presence was some kind of inconvenience. Malik's breath caught, his jaw clenched, his fingers curled into fists at his sides. "Hey," someone said beside him. "Dev, his best friend since 6th grade. You good?" Malik didn't answer. His gaze didn't move. He watched as one of the guards laughed. The other leaned closer. His dad didn't react, just stared forward, still and steady, like a statue no one had permission to touch. Malik knew that stillness, knew it like the creak of their porch swing, or the smell of boot polish before a ceremony. It was the same look his father wore the day they buried Malik's grandfather, the same one he had when bills stacked too high, but never let Malik see him sweat. But today was supposed to be different. This was the day Malik proved everything his father had taught him. The day he walked that stage not just as a student, but as a son who understood where he came from. And now two men, two strangers who hadn't earned the right to breathe the same air, thought they could diminish that. He felt his chest tighten, not with fear, with fury, but not the kind that bursts, the kind that waits. He straightened his back, took a slow breath. His turn was coming, and when it did, he wouldn't just walk the stage. He'd make sure the whole room remembered who raised him. The noise in the gym rolled like a tide, swelling with each name, each clap, each wave of phone cameras rising and falling. But near the back, where the chairs creaked more, and the crowd thinned, the tension was quiet, tighter, like something waiting to be pulled too far. Solomon felt it before he heard it. The same two guards stepping toward him again. Same boots, same clipped walk, like they were checking in on something that hadn't obeyed the first time. The shorter one spoke first, voice dipped in forced courtesy. "Sir, we're gonna have to ask you to move." Solomon looked up slowly, not startled, just aware. He met the man's eyes with the same calm you use when correcting a child who should know better. "This seat is assigned," Solomon said, voice even. He held up the ticket again. Same fold, same line of print, row 3, left section. Family seating. The guard didn't look at it, just exhaled through his nose, like this was already more attention than the situation deserved. "Yeah, well, someone else's name came up for that spot." The other one chimed in, taller this time, chewing gum like he was trying to outpace the moment. "You can move over to the side bleachers. It's not a big deal." Solomon didn't blink. "It is to me." A pause. One of the guards chuckled, low and dismissive. "We get it, hero. Don't make a scene." Solomon didn't flinch, didn't even frown, just turned his eyes forward again, straight ahead, like they'd never been there to begin with. The guard shifted his stance. "You're gonna make this hard, huh?" Still, Solomon stayed seated, calm, straight-backed, boots planted like roots. "I've done hard," he said quietly. "This isn't it." They didn't know what to do with that, because there's something unsettling about a man who doesn't argue, doesn't threaten, doesn't raise his voice, but refuses to move. Something that makes people question their footing, like maybe they've wandered into a story they weren't ready to be part of. From a few rows up, a woman turned her head. Another parent followed. It was subtle, but growing, heads angling slightly, not enough to cause a stir, but enough to say we see it too. The taller guard tugged at his radio. The shorter one rubbed the back of his neck, unsure whether to push further or back away. Solomon didn't move, because this seat wasn't just a chair. It was every mile he'd driven to get here, every night deployed, every bedtime missed, every salute earned. He didn't need permission to be present. He already was. The microphone let out a soft pop as the principal stepped to the podium, adjusting the angle with practiced hands. She smiled, wide, practiced too, and cleared her throat. "Good evening, families of the class of 2024. The gym quieted, or tried to. Behind the words something else began to stir, small at first, like static under a broadcast, a ripple in the noise no one could name yet. In the fourth row, a child leaned over and tugged at her mother's sleeve. "Why are those guys talking to that man?" she whispered, pointing not loudly, not rudely, just honestly. The mother looked, saw the two guards still hovering near the back row, saw the man they were talking to, a black man in full marine dress, seated with dignity that refused to shrink. Then she turned back quickly, uncomfortable, but the question hung there. No one answered it, not out loud. A few more heads turned, not many, just enough. Subtle movement, eyes glancing sideways. Some caught the uniform, others caught the posture. Everyone caught the difference between him and those standing over him. The principal continued. "We're so proud to welcome you to this day of celebration." Her voice cracked slightly on celebration, not from emotion, from awareness. She had seen it too. She glanced toward the back, barely, but it was enough for the front row to notice. She recovered quickly, eyes back on the script. "A day that represents dedication, achievement and family support." The words hung heavy. Family, support, dedication. They echoed with a weight the script hadn't intended. And still, Solomon didn't move. He sat like stone carved from something older than judgment. Not angry, not anxious, just rooted. present in a way that made everything else feel temporary. The taller guard shifted his stance again. The shorter one leaned in like he was preparing to speak, but didn't. Something in the room had shifted. Too many eyes now, too many angles. Up on the stage, the principal pressed on. Our students have overcome so much, and there it was again. A line meant to inspire, now colliding with reality. Because behind the row of folding chairs, there was a man who had overcome more than most, and two uniforms who hadn't earned the right to question his place. Phones tilted, not brazenly, not high, but enough to frame the tension. Enough to say, this matters. Solomon sat through it all, eyes forward, hands still. He didn't need to interrupt to be heard. He was already louder than the microphone. The names echoed through the gym like drumbeats, each one followed by applause that felt just a little more distracted than the last. Olivia Daniels. Clap clap. Jared Davis. Clap. The rhythm had slipped, not from disinterest, but because too many eyes were drifting, not to the stage, but to the back row. Solomon hadn't moved. Still seated, still silent. The guards hadn't moved either. They stood with their arms crossed, feet planted like they were guarding something more important than folding chairs. One leaned against the bleacher rail. The other kept his hand too close to the radio clipped to his belt. Malik Kane was 3 names away. His robe felt too tight across the chest. The tassel on his cap kept sliding into his line of vision, but he didn't fix it. He didn't look at the camera crew near the stage, or the principal clearing her throat again. His eyes stayed locked on one place, back row, far left, where his father sat. Unmoved, unbothered, but Malik knew better. He knew what that silence really was. The same silence that had followed him through every hard conversation, every sideways glance from teachers who called him articulate, like it was a surprise. The silence his dad kept when the mortgage piled up, but dinner stayed on the table. It wasn't avoidance. It was armor. Lisa Navarro. Clap clap clap. Malik was next. 2 people left in front of him now. His heart pounded, not from nerves, but from knowing the moment was coming, and the air in the gym already felt thinner for it. The student ahead of him looked back with a quick grin. Malik didn't smile, just nodded. Behind him someone whispered, "Is something going on?" "Yes, everything." He adjusted his cap, straightened his cords, took a breath that scraped against his ribs. From the corner of his eye, he saw one of the guards shift again, glance toward the exit like he was waiting on backup. Or maybe just waiting for someone to tell him how this was supposed to end. But Malik already knew, not the details, just the truth. He didn't need a script. He didn't need permission, because some things get handed to you in envelopes. And some things you claim with your whole chest. Malik Kane. The speaker said his name. The microphone caught it, but the silence that followed caught everything else. He stepped forward, and the storm stepped with him. The stage lights weren't bright, but they felt that way. Malik stepped into them like he was stepping into heat. His chest high, hands steady, every inch of him pulled tight, with purpose. The principal extended her hand. He shook it. She smiled, kind, distracted, already looking past him to the next student. He took the diploma folder, felt the soft weight of it in his fingers. He was supposed to keep walking, down the stairs, across the gym, back to his seat, like everyone else. He didn't. Instead, he stopped, turned, faced the crowd. There was a moment, half a second, when everything still felt normal. Like maybe he was just soaking it in, like every proud kid should. A few parents lifted phones again. Someone whistled. But Malik didn't smile. He looked straight to the back, past the rows of clapping families, past the bleachers, past the stairs, to the man still seated in the last row, to the guards still standing like walls that hadn't been asked to be there. Malik raised the microphone slightly, not to his mouth, but enough, just enough, and he spoke. If my father can fight for this country, his voice wasn't loud. It didn't have to be. It carried in the way truth always does. Then he can sit in front. 12 words. 12 bricks thrown into still water. The room froze. The sound didn't fade. It just vanished. Like someone had flipped a switch, but turned off everything except breath and memory. One of the guards shifted. The other blinked, suddenly unsure of how his arms were supposed to fold. Near the stage, the principal lowered her clipboard. A teacher near the bleachers dropped her pen, and Solomon Kane. He didn't move, didn't nod, didn't blink. He just sat in that plastic chair, with the full weight of those words resting on his shoulders. Words that weren't loud, but carried louder than any speech ever could. The silence stretched. Long enough to ache, long enough to mean something. And then somewhere, a single clap, sharp, slow, intentional, then another, and another, until the whole gym erupted, not in chaos, not in obligation, but in recognition, not just for a graduate, but for the line he drew in the sand with nothing but his voice. It wasn't quiet. It was something heavier than that. The kind of silence that presses against your chest and makes you forget to swallow. Malik's words still hung in the air like dust that hadn't settled. If my father can fight for this country, then he can sit in front. No music, no name announcements, no canned applause, just stillness. A teacher near the stage pressed her hand to her chest without realizing she'd done it. A mother in the bleachers dabbed the corner of her eye with the edge of a program, her fingers trembling. Someone exhaled, too loudly, and it sounded like thunder in the quiet. The principal lowered her head, not out of shame, out of acknowledgement. And the guards, they stepped back, not fast, not panicked, but with the kind of retreat that only happens when someone realizes they've been seen in the wrong light. The taller one looked to the exit. The shorter one avoided every pair of eyes in the room. Solomon Kane hadn't moved. Same seat, same posture, but now the entire gym saw him. Not the uniform, not the ribbons. Him. The father who drove hours to see his son walk. The man who didn't stand when told, because sitting was the statement. The room watched him like he had just become something more than man and more than symbol, like he was the reminder they hadn't known they needed. No flash, no fury, just presence. He didn't raise his hand, didn't tip his head, but something had shifted. A weight redistributed, and for once it wasn't on his shoulders alone. It was in the way people sat straighter in their seats. The way students looked to the back instead of the stage. The way every pair of eyes in that gym now saw the plastic chair as something more than furniture. It was now the most respected seat in the room. And the silence. It didn't demand anything. It didn't ask for applause. It was the applause. It started small. A single clap. Sharp. Hesitant. A student in the lineup, second from the end, cap tilted slightly to the side, brought his hands together once more. Then again. A slow, steady rhythm, like he was keeping time with something larger than himself. Then another student joined. And another, until a ripple of applause began moving through the line. A chain reaction of understanding that didn't need words. It wasn't loud at first. It wasn't fast. But it was sure. The teachers near the stage stood. One removed her glasses and wiped her eyes, clapping with a kind of reverence that had nothing to do with tradition. The principal remained still for a breath longer, then set her notes aside. She clapped too. In the bleachers a father in a faded work shirt stood slowly, then a mother with a toddler on her lap. Then more, parents rising, row by row, not because someone told them to, because something inside said stand. The applause deepened, not frantic, not chaotic. It rolled like thunder over water, heavy, certain, meant. This wasn't the kind of cheer you hear when someone crosses a finish line. It was the sound of correction, of a room trying to right itself. The applause wasn't for Malik's grades, not for his speech. It was for the silence before it. It was for the father who never stood, but somehow rose anyway. It was for every moment someone had to choose between dignity and disruption, and chose to stay seated and still. Solomon didn't move. Not even now, but his presence felt different. Not heavier, not lighter, just held. By the room. By the echo of claps that weren't choreographed but came from the marrow of something real. Malik stood on the stage, diploma still in hand, eyes sweeping across the crowd now on its feet. He didn't smile. He didn't bow. He just looked to the back row, to the chair that had never needed to be in the front, to command it. And for the first time that evening, Solomon blinked. Not because he was overwhelmed, because the moment had spoken, and the room had finally learned how to listen. The crowd spilled out of the gym like a tide, finally released, families hugging, balloons tangling in the breeze, camera flashes catching joy mid-step. The parking lot buzzed with laughter, car horns, the rustle of plastic leaves and cardboard signs. But near the edge, where the noise thinned and the shadows stretched longer, two figures stood still. Malik found him without searching. His father hadn't moved far, just past the flagpole, beside the old Dodge that had made the trip from 3 towns over, hands in his pockets. Uniform jacket unbuttoned at the collar now, like he was finally letting himself breathe. They didn't rush toward each other. No dramatic embrace, just a pause. The kind that only happens between men who know silence isn't empty, it's earned. Malik stopped a few feet away. Their eyes met. Neither spoke. Not at first. There was too much in the air that didn't need translation. Solomon looked at his son, at the cords draped over his shoulders, the cap tilted in his hand, the way his jaw had started to set, like his own. Malik looked older than this morning. Taller, maybe. But that wasn't it. Something in him had shifted. A weight he'd picked up and carried like it belonged to him now. Finally, Solomon spoke. His voice low. Even, I taught you how to stand. Malik nodded once. And I watched every time you didn't move. Solomon's mouth lifted at the corner, just slightly. But today, you taught me how to speak. Malik's voice didn't waver. You already spoke. A beat. I just turned up the volume. The breeze moved through them, slow and warm. A few caps rolled across the pavement behind them. Distant cheering still floated over from the other end of the lot. But it didn't touch this space. Here, there was only acknowledgement. Quiet, solid, shared. Solomon looked down, thumbed the edge of a creased photo he'd carried in his inside pocket. Malik as a baby, wrapped in a blanket, the color of desert sand. His late wife's smile half faded with time. He didn't pull it out. He just kept it close. Malik stepped forward, then, not fast, not soft, just certain. He stood shoulder to shoulder with his father, and in that moment, there was nothing left to prove. Only something passed down, quietly, from one man to another. By the time the sun dipped behind the gym roof, the lot had mostly emptied. Only a few families lingered, packing up folding chairs, stuffing streamers into trunks, trying to make the joy last a little longer. But the air had changed. Not in the way you notice, but in the way you feel. The applause was over. The stage was quiet. No speeches left to give. But something stayed. Not captured on phones. Not posted, or shared, just carried. In glances, in posture, in the way people who had seen it walked back to their cars slower than they came in. No one called the news. No one uploaded a clip. It didn't trend. It didn't need to. Because it had already written itself into memory. The kind that returns unprompted on quiet nights. The kind that teaches without speaking. Solomon stood at the edge of the lot, his hands resting on the roof of the car, watching the last streaks of orange fade into grey. He wasn't thinking about the guards, or the seat. He was thinking about how his son had stood under lights, and turned silence into witness. This wasn't revenge. This wasn't protest. It was legacy. The kind that doesn't demand recognition, just respect. Inside Malik, something had clicked into place. Not a role he was stepping into, but a truth he'd finally claimed. He hadn't just graduated. He had crossed into manhood in front of a room that had to reckon with what that meant. Not by shouting, but by seeing, by saying something when it counted. And Solomon, who had built his life on quiet strength, now understood what it meant to raise a voice, not with volume, but with precision. As the last few cars pulled away, Malik leaned against the passenger door, cap still in his hand, cords still draped across his shoulders. He didn't say anything more, didn't have to. His father reached out, clasped the back of his neck gently, and they stood like that for a breath longer. No medals, no flags, just the echo of a moment that didn't need to be repeated, because it had landed. And somewhere deep in that echo was the shape of a future that had already begun. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of your father, your son, or the quiet power of simply standing your ground, share it. Let someone else feel that silence. Subscribe to Black Roots for more true stories that don't shout, but stay with you, because sometimes the most powerful moments don't need to go viral to make history.